Hey everyone, welcome to the studio. It's a time for another demo, and this demo I'm going to call the Big Fix. And I've done these in the past, and they are a lot of fun for me because what I do is I take an older failed painting and I repurpose the paper. Sometimes I'll try to make that same scene a little bit better, improve upon the original idea, or sometimes I just start all over and reuse the paper. What I'm going to do today though is sort of a combination of the two. I'm going to take the original painting, the scene that I have, and by the way, I will be posting a photo of the original painting because I've already done the step 2 in the description so you can see what the painting looked like before. It wasn't a terrible painting, but it just, you know, I wasn't too excited about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to redo that painting and try to make it better, but I'm going to take the main shapes that were in that painting and I'm going to reimagine the painting and I'm going to make it into a field of sunflowers in the south of France. So from a photo that I took. So let's come on over and let me show you what I've done and what I'm going to do. This is kind of a fun demo because it's a hybrid of all the things we've been talking about this month. Adding structures, so I'm going to try to add a little building. Working with yellow, so I'm going to be playing with sunflowers. And also, the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge myself to use this Snowbird set from Ludwig. I mentioned this earlier in the month, and I know that several of you purchased the set, and that you were asking for a demo using the set. So I'm going to push myself to use this set as much as I can, but I know that it doesn't have everything. It's a small set, so I've pulled out a few hard pastels and a few other greens and yellows that I might need to add. So what have I done already? I took the original painting, and by the way, this is on Uart sanded paper, and I didn't brush off the original pastel painting, but what I did was I took some clear gesso. Liquitex makes it. I have to think about the other one who makes it. But you want clear. And I've blogged about this and I've posted about this in the past. But if you're new to the page, you might not be familiar with this technique. But clear gesso, for some reason, has a little bit of grittiness to it. Regular gesso does not have it. So you want clear. And what I do with the clear gesso is I take a cheap brush and I just kind of scrub it on. Now what it will do is it will liquefy the pastel because you're getting it wet, and it'll kind of push it around. So I've retained the original colors and shapes. But I like to use this kind of cheap brush so I can scrub it in. It darkened everything, it dulled everything, and it made it rough. So that's going to be fun to work on. But again, clear gesso is what you want. Regular gesso isn't going to give you the texture, isn't going to give you that sandy feeling. Alright, so what I'm about to do is, let's look at here's the photo that is going to hopefully inspire this painting. And I've had to make some changes because the tree in the original painting was over here on the left. So I'm going to take this big tree and swap it. I'm going to just swap the building and the tree. And I'm going to change the sunflower field so that we can have a few sunflowers over here in this area, so that we can kind of have a lead into the painting. So I'm going to, several of you have asked for a demo where I don't talk, and I like to do that occasionally, where you just kind of watch me and see what I do. Because I am really just kind of working my way through this one. This is one of those fun things when the Big Fix is always a fun thing where you challenge yourself and you see what happens. So I'm not going to talk as much. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to talk at all, but I'm not going to illustrate every move that I make. But I will say this, I always begin every painting by reinforcing the dark areas, and that's what I'm doing right now. As well as put in some indication of some tree trunks. Keep in mind when you challenge yourself with using a small set of pastels, you have a limited palette, and whenever you have a limited palette you have to make sacrifices. But it is it's a fun thing to do. Right now I'm just layering the darks to get interesting dark. You can see the texture of the paper is really making the pastel kind of skip over those grooves. That can be frustrating when you're not used to really highly textured paper. But if you try this and you are frustrated, just remind yourself that you're embracing something different. And you might think, oh, it's going to eat up my pastels. It really hasn't done too much damage. If you really can't stand the texture, you can get some sort of tool. I like to use pipe foam insulation or even a finger, and you can rub it in. But I like the texture, so I'm not gonna stress over it. All right, now I'm gonna start to add some of the greens. Let's assume that the light is coming from over here, because I'm making so many changes that I can change the direction of the light. What I don't have is my Cherry Ludwig eggplant, which is always a nice accent color, so I'll probably go grab that in just a minute. I don't know if you can find one. Actually, look, hold on a second, I can get it. It's probably in this tray. Here we go. I've got a little nugget, and I'm going to use it for the tree trunk and to ground the tree. And maybe just a little bit of it down here in the foreground. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to do the light areas, which happens to be the sky. And we have a beautiful blue sky, summer day. And this, Snowbird? Let's make sure I'm calling it right. Snowbird limited edition set has really nice blues. Next month I'm going to use it to paint some birds in the snow. So that'll be fun. If you don't have the set, I think it's going to go back on sale for a limited time in December. Someone wrote to me and said that. I don't know for sure. But I'll put a photo of that set so that you can look at it, and if you like the colors, you can certainly go through your own pastel collection and make up a set of similar colors. So I'm digging into that tree, kind of create some sky holes. As we come towards the horizon, we have a nice warm glow. So I'm going to use a pale yellow. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to talk. See, I knew that would happen. I can't just paint and not talk. Now, one thing that I will say, let me clean off my finger, is when you have a lot of busy stuff going on in your painting, so we're going to have a lot going on here, sometimes it's nice to have a nice quiet sky. And we have a lot of texture in this paper, but I can take my finger and soften and kind of dull down the sky just a little bit. And then I'm going to take that blue after I've rubbed it in and restore some of that glow, that luminosity that pastel brings, just to quiet down the sky a little bit. Okay, now moving on, we're going to do these. This is where I might be limited with this particular set, because it doesn't have the distant greens that I like, those blue greens. So if we don't have blue-green, what can we do? Well, we have to layer with colors that we do have. So I'm going to take a cooler green, which happens to be turquoise, that I do have at my disposal, and I'm going to layer. Remember, pastel, we can layer to create a feeling of new colors. And another thing that's happening is that dull gray that you see from the back, from the underpainting, I'm going to leave that, because that kind of helps give a feeling of another layer. So by adding that turquoise, it helped push these trees into the distance. And we have these, that might be too tall, that guy. So let's give him a haircut. There we go. Okay. Now moving on. We need some dirt. What can we use for the dirt? How about some red violet? And some Now I put on that red because it was in the set, but I really think it's a little bit jarring for my color harmony, so I'm going to cover it up. It's a little too much. But we have that ability to do that. You might be thinking, well, what about those sunflowers? You haven't done those yet. Well, we're going to hint at them. We're really just seeing the tops of them right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my workable fixative, spray all of this, which darkens it and dulls it and allows me to kind of build on the layers a little bit better. And we'll let that dry for just a second, and then we will continue. I have to figure out how I'm going to arrange these sunflowers, because there's a few rows in my reference photo, but let's see. Let's change these. Let's do like this. Now I'm going to paint big areas of this gold sunflower color to begin with. And then I'm going to come in and paint the individual flowers. So big broad areas first and then detail. Add some more green stuff. Alright. Now before I do any more on the sunflowers, I'm going to work a little bit more on the tree. The tree needs to have a little bit more light. And the only light in this set is too light and has too much white in it, so it wouldn't give me that feeling of a sunny day. So I'm resorting to these extra pastels that I put out. I'll share a photo of those as well. We've got this area right in here that kind of looks messy. Do I want to put another tree, or do I want to continue the distant trees behind it? Actually, I'm going to save that one. I'm just talking to myself, working my way through this painting. This is always fun to challenge yourself to. I'm looking at the photo and I see that the big tree is probably some sort of like olive tree. It's got a coolness to it, but I don't have those colors out, so I'm gonna make this just some other kind of tree that has warmer tones to it. Well, I really want to get more texture in the tree. I'm going to give it another quick spray. We'll let that dry and we'll come back over it. So now let's go into this distant field. In this distant field, we're going to have an illusion that the sunflower continue back here. So we're going to paint some kind of rows of a dull yellow ochre. I'm going to dull it down even more because it's in the distance. We don't want it as bright as the sunflowers in the foreground. And then we need to paint some of the green stuff. I'm going to use that dull light green that was in the Snowbird set. That works good for distant grass. And now as we come forward, we're going to start to see more detail. And once again, I'm going to remind you, we're working on this really, really rough surface. So we have to kind of let the paper dictate a little bit with what's going to happen. Go with the flow of your paper. I still have, I'm not sure what's going on over here. I think if I add some more green stuff, I can kind of cover that area up a little bit. This doesn't feel finished. And I'll definitely put a sunflower. Alright, we are getting there. This is dry, so we'll add a little bit more light. And you see how the texture kind of creates that feeling of foliage without even having to paint leaves. And I'm going to have to remind myself that this painting is really not about this tree. So I've talked about this before. It's so easy to get fixated on one area and you think, oh, it's not the way I want it. I have to keep working in this area. And really, leave it alone. Go and do something else and come back to it. That's all a constant battle. All right. So, let's get into these sunflowers. We are going to first paint their centers. Okay, he's telling me to move back. We had this discussion, and that I tend to stand right in front of the board when I'm getting into the painting, and I apologize. I'm trying to remind myself. Those are the centers of the sunflowers. Painting those first. And I'm painting in the foreground, which we'll be able to see them. I'm going to start with a warmer yellow orange. And I arrange these flowers in such a way that the goal is to lead the eye kind of up to the tree, and then I'm going to pull the eye back from the tree over to this area by adding that structure. Now, this is where it can get tricky, where we can easily put in too many flowers, right? We just kind of get carried away. Okay, here's a little bit of a more yellow in that. These again are from the Snowbird set. Interesting, right? That there's so many colors that we can use in a landscape that come from a set that was designed to paint birds. Alright, now what happens as we go into the distance, the flowers are going to get smaller, right? So to create that feeling of depth, I'm just going to just dot a few back there. We can give a little center to this guy. Reinforce some of those centers. What about over here? We could have some kind of, I'm going to make this kind of a shadowed area so we can have some maybe hiding. So let's make those a little bit duller. We'll hide, oops, that's too late. We'll hide it. Okay, let's add some foliage to these guys with some of the darker green. And pull some of the lighter foliage down. These guys are almost too lined up. I'm going to throw another guy right in the middle just to kind of break up that that space. Now I'm going to take that Terry Ludwig eggplant and I'm going to come in and, oh, it's crumbling in my fingers, and just put a, I'm going to put a little more clarity and definition into some of these larger sunflowers in the foreground. But I don't want to add it everywhere. Okay, I feel like we need another guy right here, kind of going to be hidden with grass. Okay, I'm going to give it another quick spray. We're getting to the end, and I realize I haven't stopped talking. One day what I'll do is maybe I'll talk, but then I'll put music over it. I don't know. Oops. I wanted to put a little bit of definition on the tree trunk. That was too light. I'm adding a little bit of the red violet. Why? Because I had a lot of the red violet down here, right, in the underpainting, or the first layers. So it's always nice to add some of it back. Okay, let's add some stems to some of these guys in the foreground with some hard pastels, some leaf shapes. And then I'm going to come in with some of my really bright yellow, and I'm going to add some more definition to some of the petals in these foreground flowers. Because the idea is, if I have detail and clarity where I want you to look, then the rest of the flowers can kind of go out of focus. These three are lined up perfectly, which that's not good, right? So we have this diagonal line. So what do? Do we get rid of one, or do we add another one? And sometimes I don't know until I do it. So let's try to add another one right back here and see if that helps break up that too even. Yeah, that helps. So you want to watch for things that are lined up. And what about this corner? Still kind of boring, isn't it? Maybe a couple of leaf shapes might help. Maybe some grass. Again, I have to remind myself that I'm working with a very textured surface, and we have to embrace that. Let's add some really artificial bright greens here to some of the stems. Again, what I'm trying to do is make little bits and pieces that pull your eye around the painting. Well, let's add a little bit of brightness to some of these flowers back here by the tree. Alright, and then what we'll do is let's add that structure. Oh, I think I'm going to add one more guy right in there, a little bright. Okay, so we'll bury the structure right over here. Let's start with, use the side of the pastel, this nice, there's actually two little houses right in here. So we'll start with a darker, or a lighter peach, and then in the shadow side we'll use a pale blue, and then in the lit side where it's getting some sunlight, let's reverse that. This is the light side, and then this was the shadow side, and the roof is that nice tile roof, peachy color, so we'll add some of that in there. And let's add a little bit of a door, just some little marks. And let's add just a little bit of kind of grass around that area, and little tiny hits of some smaller sunflowers back in there. So the idea is your eye goes here, but then you're compelled to look to see what's over on this side. Yeah, so I think I'm going to stop right here, let it rest. I might do a little bit more, but it is to the point where I need to let it rest, as you know. But I have taken something that to me it wasn't working, which you'll see, and I changed it into something that was more fun. So that's it, the big fix. I hope you enjoyed this demo, and let me know if you have any questions, and let's have fun and let's paint.